My name is Deborah Pigeon.
And you were a foster parent?
Yes, I was a foster parent of 10 adolescents. No, 8 adolescents over a period of 10 years.
Wow.
And my own children, biological children at the time, were anywhere from 4 and 6 to 6 and 9, something like that.
So what inspired you to foster children?
Well, I was a single parent. I worked nights as a detox nurse. I had daytimes. I was interested in working with kids, and I've always been attracted to the kids who get in trouble. I love them. And so I joined up with a program called DARE, where I got some of my kids, and I ended up getting kids through the Department of Youth Services and the Department of Social Services. So I had kids that either had criminal backgrounds or who had disturbed backgrounds, and for some reason at that time in my life I thought this would be really exciting and interesting, and it was.
Now, you were a single mom. How did you deal with that by yourself? I mean,
Well, it was a challenge.
you put yourself into an extremely challenging situation.
I did, because I was taking care of my own 2 kids and then having 1 or 2 foster children at a time. And my role was it was called the Program for Independent Living, and my role was to teach them how to balance a checkbook, fill out a resume to get a job, an application. The first foster child I had was already, I think, 17 when she came to live with us, and she was pregnant. So my job was to teach her how to go to the doctor, how to take care of herself through pregnancy, how to eat well, that sort of thing. I was with her when she had the baby. We're still friends with the baby, who's now 28 years old and has her own family.
Wow.
The mother we're not so in touch with, because at the time she lived with us, she was doing great, and as she got older, she developed alcoholism, and it developed into a very serious situation, and she's still active and living on the streets.
Wow.
On Cape Cod. So, and then we had a series of kids after that. The second most significant one was a guy named Dale, who lived with us for 3 years as a foster child, and then lived with us for 2 years after that, because I had always told him that when he got out on his own, if he ever needed a leg up, he could come live with us and pay rent and whatever. So he did indeed come back after he had left us with a girlfriend, and she was pregnant.
Right.
So, it was kind of a dual support system in that case. Then the next 6 were all kids who also, a couple of them went to the Pennakees Island program. Do you know about that? Pennakees Island School is an island off the coast of Massachusetts, off Woods Hole, where they have a school for delinquent boys. And so they empty the island out on the weekends, and I would take the kids on the weekends, the ones that didn't have homes to go home to.
Right.
So I did that.
That must have been intense.
Very intense. And those kids were a bit more troubled and did things like break into my neighbors' houses and stuff like that. So that got a little more complicated. And it was after a series of those kids that I stopped doing foster care, because it was impinging on my neighbors, and they weren't very happy about it. The kid that, Dale, who really became like my son, Kathy, the first one, became like my daughter. He became like my son. And my son, my biological son, really looked up to him. Dale was 16 when he first came to live with us, and my son was 5. And Dale went and pierced his left ear. And my son said, I have to have a pierce too. And so we went and they got pierced side by side, because, what was I supposed to tell him? We were getting our ears pierced. He had to do it too. Right. And, this kid was the son of an alcoholic who would get sober, get him out of foster care, get drunk again, he'd go back into foster care. And so this was a kid who, he came to live with us and he could get anything he wanted. Back in those days they had CETA, which was school in the morning and a work opportunity in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And Dale would go do that. Just before he graduated, which was 9 months, he sabotaged it and got himself kicked out. He decided he wanted to go to a regular high school. And I'll never forget sitting in that room with probably 20 people, the principal, the vice principal, every guidance counselor, everybody. And he talked his way into the school and then sabotaged his way out. He couldn't succeed. And that was the hardest part about the whole thing. And then when he moved out of my house, because he was released from foster care because of his age, he tried working around the Cape, and then he went to Vermont, and he just couldn't get it together. So he had stopped using drugs. He went back to it, and he hung himself from a tree in a forest up there while he was under the influence of LSD. And I think it was just, you know, he had a girlfriend, he had a baby, and I think he just couldn't handle it. Yeah. He was about 22, and he tried. He was a sweet, wonderful, my kids still talk about him with great fondness, and, you know, we're very, 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 very sad when he died, because it was like a big brother for them. Yeah. So, you know, I had 8 of them, and all of them they've either ended up in prison. 2 of them ended up in state prison, not just jail, but prison, you know, serious issues, rape, things like that. And the rest have ended up losing their children. My first one that had the baby in my house eventually lost, not the first child, but the second child, who wasn't around us, but in later life. So there was a sense of failure. Yeah. And I think a lot of that was because they had some supports until they were 18, and then suddenly they're out in the world, and even though I could teach them how to balance a checkbook or how to fill out an application, they didn't have the emotional supports once they got out. Right. And I provided some supports to 2 of them, but I think there was so much history, so much disappointing history, that they just couldn't come out of it.
One of the things that Orange Duffel Bag does when the kids age out is they give them an orange duffel bag with a Mac computer, a cell phone with time on it, socks, toothbrush, toothpaste, things that they believe they need. Mm-hmm. If you could put 5 things in an orange duffel bag for a kid who was aging out, what would you put? And you can double up. I mean, you can say the same things if you like. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a computer is a great idea. I think a phone is a great idea. I think they need 3 months' rent for an apartment of some sort. I think they need a job, you know, assistance in getting a job, or a job, you know, and maybe some job training if they haven't gone on to college, which is unlikely that they would at that point. At least none of my 8 did at that point. One of them went on later for a while. A work experience of some sort, maybe a Vista type experience, or City Core, what do they call it? City Core, I think. Something like that. I think they need, you know, it's not going to fit in the duffel bag, but, you know, the idea that there's somebody, a phone number of somebody that they can call, or an agency that they can call that can help them with those kinds of life skills.
Yeah, a list.
A list.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of people say a list of places and people that care.
Right.
You know, for them to use that cell phone to call.
People that they can rent a room from, people that they can work for. Maybe they can work as a gopher on a carpentry team, or, you know, work in an ice cream shop, or work in a restaurant washing dishes, and then maybe be given a chance on the cooking line. You know, things that are going to give them something that they can do, because most times they just don't have the skills to be released out into the world.
And what happens?
They become drug addicts, and they turn to crime. They go on the street.
Can one person change someone? Can one person make a difference?
Make a difference, but not necessarily. I think some of the damage is so great that I think some of these kids need long-term help. You know, they need long-term support. And I think they're not emotionally equipped to be out in the world. I think they're going to take, as so much of our culture is now, you know, most 19-year-olds are like what most 29-year-olds are now like 19-year-olds. You know, they're taking longer, even from families that are intact and going to college.
The average age is 26 for
Yeah.
being financially independent.
Right. So you take one of these kids who's out at 18, what chance do they have? They don't have, maybe they've had a couple of years of foster care, people who love them, but it's not enough.
Do you think the government can fix them?
I don't think they can fix them, but I think they can provide more services for them so that they, because I think there are enough people in the helping professions. I'm a psychotherapist, and I know that, you know, I care a great deal about some of the kids that I work with, and will often see them for free because they may miss some services or just not know how else to do it. And, you know, I'll do things like go for walks or, you know, take them to a job interview or something like that that's a little bit unorthodox, even as a private practitioner, just to, you know, provide a link in the gap.
Yeah.
Space.
What do you think the answer is? I mean, what I feel is that, yes, the government can provide a certain service, but people have to step up. Ordinary people, like yourself.
Ordinary people, and they need mentors. They need, you know, some people that maybe work in a certain industry or a certain art. They can, you know, help them learn a skill. You know, how do you weld?
Yeah.
Teach them how to weld. Teach them how to hammer a nail. You know, teach them how to work on boats. You know, whatever it is, they need that kind of a leg up.
Yeah.
Work makes a big difference. When
Yeah.
they work, it gives them self-esteem. They have their own paycheck. It's a huge leg up. So yeah, it's ordinary people.
Yeah. So who cared about you?
Well, I had parents who put a roof over my head and put food in my mouth, and, you know, we had everything, all the material things. And I knew I was loved. I was not necessarily raised in an emotionally fulfilling situation, but, you know, at the bottom of it, I knew that I had a leg up that way. And I had people along the way, teachers, or I had a cousin.
Was there one person in your life that made a difference?
I had a cousin who was 10 years older than me, who all through my childhood I loved horses, so she would give me horse books, or she knew I was taking French, so she would bring an album of French Christmas carols, or The Little Prince written in French, or, you know, she would talk to me in French, and she always, she would come up to me with her hands behind her back with a book, because she knew I loved to read. So she encouraged the arts. I would never really, my parents didn't expose me to art, music, all those things. It really was my cousin Judy who did all that.
Yeah.
And she was a very big influence.
And that made a difference?
Made a difference, yeah.
Changed you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't think I would have opened up to all of those things.